Orrin Hatch with him right now. Senator, what changed?
Nothing except 19 years, and the fact was that was a nomination to the Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a very high court in our country, but it's not the Supreme Court. The difference between that and the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court really can make the law. It can interpret the Constitution, you know, any way they want to, and some think they can make the Constitution into what they want to.
But fast forward some years later, sir, 13 years later, in 2010, you were talking about Judge Garland saying that I have no doubt that Garland would get a lot of Senate votes. This is when he was among those being considered for the Supreme Court, and I will do my best to help him get them.
Well, I cleared the way for Merrick Garland, and I still think very highly of him. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read a lot of his cases in the recent years, and that becomes a must before any of these things can happen. But I still have a very high opinion of him, but I do think that we should not bring up a Supreme Court justice and get in this big mess again, wrecking the court, you know, during this really toxic presidential year. And that really bothers me. I mean, I gave a major speech to the Federalist Society, and it was interrupted by people sent over by the Democrats and even the president's group. They interrupted it and just kept yelling throughout the speech until they finally wore out. But this is the kind of stuff that it's two-bit stuff that they play on you. And frankly, this is a serious, important thing, and it ought to be put off out of this toxic arena right now and put off to after the election, and then whoever is president can make that determination, and that's fair to both sides.
What if it is Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders who become president? Do you think Republicans will rue the day that they missed a chance at a moderate pick for the court? Because either one of those folks would probably pick someone a little bit more to the left.
Well, this is the most important issue in this presidential campaign, and it's a big reason why people should vote for the Republican nominee, whoever that may be, because the next president is going to probably have somewhere between 3 and 4 judicial picks on the Supreme Court, and that could turn the whole Constitution around in accordance with some of these activist liberal Democrat judges that just don't seem to worry too much about what the Constitution says.
You know, Senator, I understand what you're saying, sir, and I appreciate you know, it's a crazy election year and all. But by that reasoning, nothing would ever get done in an election year because it's a toxic environment. And true to form, nothing really does get done on budget matters, on legislative matters. Why should Republicans play that game that is notoriously played out in election years and say, no, we're going to be different. We're going to, in this environment, weigh the president's choices, come up with budgets, come up with legislation, do the kind of stuff that cynics don't think we can, and if you don't like this nominee, vote him down.
Well, it isn't quite that simple. Joe Biden made it very clear when he talked a year and a half before the election that you should not be putting people up during a presidential election.
Why?
There's good reason for that.
Why?
Because it's a toxic environment. It demeans the court. People then make the court into a politicized institution rather than one
It's always politicized, Senator. It's always politicized. And by that math, you would just rule out the last year of any Congress, of any senator, of any president for getting stuff done. You could send a powerful signal by saying, you know what? We're going to hold hearings. We don't like the guy. We're going to vote him down. But we know the Democrats have played these games. We know we in the past have played these games. We're not going to play these games.
We're sending a powerful signal that once voting is started in a presidential election campaign in that particular toxic environment, especially the one we have today that is very toxic, we should not be bringing up a Supreme Court nomination.
But you know, Senator, how early these campaign years start, earlier and earlier and earlier. By that math, you could argue a year ago that you shouldn't have started this. You know what I'm saying? That it gets out of control.
I'm talking about a presidential year. This is, you know, we all know the president's a lame duck president. And there's a question whether a lame duck president during a really toxic year like this should be nominating.
When does he become a lame duck, Senator? When do you think is it the last year? Because that's a long time.
When it comes to the Supreme Court, yes. Because let me tell you something, and especially this year, I've never seen such a toxic year and such a horrific year as we have right now. And these Supreme Court nominations shouldn't be great big battles every time a president picks somebody. And the president ought to be very careful to pick people that, whoever the president is, that literally will do the job and not allow politics to take over.
So you would subscribe to that, Senator, if it's a Republican president gets in, the last year he's in office, he submits a name, you as a Republican, and a prominent one of that, would tell him, no, we can't consider it.
Well, I think we would. I mean, I've actually advised presidents not to do that, but unfortunately, we haven't had any late situations where somebody's been put up, other than Justice Kennedy, and that was after they had smeared Bob's work and hurt Ginsburg.
Fair enough.
And
nevertheless, it was in the final year of Ronald Reagan's presidency.
Well, but everybody just kind of gave up.
I understand that, but there is precedent.
Yeah, there's precedent, but it wasn't a toxic year like this, nor was it a year where people are all up in arms about everything. And frankly, that's what bothers me. I'm tired of the court being politicized, and this is politicizing the court during this particular
no
year.
offense, Senator. I mean, you've played a part in politicizing it. Maybe that wasn't your goal,
I don't think so.
But both parties do this, and I think it would be interesting to see a guy like you who's widely respected, both sides of the aisle, say, you know what, I've had enough of this nonsense.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said maybe this is a great time for you to say, I've had enough of this nonsense. Let's do this.
Well, I've had enough of the nonsense that's occurred in some of these past processes, and they occurred not in a presidential year where voting had already started and half the voting is over. Look, this is not the way to do Supreme Court nominations, and frankly, it isn't the person. It isn't the person that we're against. It's this system that really doesn't work well, and it diminishes the court, reduces the respect for the court, and frankly, I don't want anything to do with something that's going to diminish the respect of the court.
I know you're very tight for time, but I do want to get your sense that if Hillary Clinton is elected, if she were the nominee and she's elected in November, would Republicans hurry back after the election for a vote on this guy, fearing that if it were her choice, it would be a much worse guy, politically, in your eyes?
Well, I can't speak to that because I don't know, but you know, I presume that she would probably keep Merrick Garland right there, since there's an effort being put forward. But yeah, she's likely to put much more liberal people and much more activist people on the court.
So if that were the case, and she's inclined to find someone even a little bit more progressive than he, you'd have to scramble to vote on him then, right?
Well, that's a good reason why we should not elect Hillary Clinton or any other Democrat. We need to elect a Republican, whoever that Republican may be, and if it's Donald Trump, I'm all for it. The fact of the matter is, it could be Kasich or Cruz now, and there's no use kidding about it. This is important stuff, and it shouldn't be brought up when you're going to have people screaming and shouting, and groups interrupting speeches that were promoted by the White House.
By the way, how do you like Donald Trump? If he is your nominee, are you okay with that?
Whoever's our nominee in the end, I'm going to support, because we have to get these things under control, and it's going to take a Republican.
So you're not in the Mitt Romney camp that even if he were, he'd go elsewhere?
Well, I'll put it this way. Whoever wins, I'm going to be for. It's just that simple, because I think whoever the Republican is, they're going to be better than Hillary Clinton, who I know and respect and like, but the fact of the matter is I don't think she's going to make a good president. And whoever it is, I think we'll be a lot better off in this country, and this is a good reason to make that case, because whoever it is going to appoint better people to the courts in this country.
Okay. Senator, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Nice to be with you.